welcome back to LillySquared,
a video podcast by women for women. All right, well, so let's address what is on your foot and what happened over this fall break with you.
Well, I have this beautiful boot on my foot. It's actually very stylish if you ask me. I'm also on crutches. So you see, last Friday I was carrying this football that my chef of our sorority house gave me, and I happened to be wearing socks, and I was on carpet, and I was messing around, and I turned the corner a little too quick, and my ankle said, "No thanks," and just rolled. And well, it was homecoming weekend, you see, and I do not stop or slow down, so I'm just homecoming, like, let's go, let's walk up to the Oriad, like, let's walk up 6 flights of stairs to the top of the Oriad. Let's do it. Awesome, great. Walking up, and I am just looking at my ankle Monday morning, and I look at it, and I'm like panicking. Like, it looks disgusting, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not good. Like, what the heck? So I go to the doctor, and they're like, oh yeah, this is fractured. So I was like, okay, cool. So how long am I in a boot for? 2 weeks. Fantastic.
Great.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
Now we're here.
Now we're here. Well, I don't know about you, but during fall break, I kind of missed filming an episode for LillySquared.
I felt a little lonely at home. Although I did go back to Colorado, and I had a lot of fun seeing all the trees. And the day after I left, it started snowing, and I was really sad I missed the snow.
Oh, man.
But I still had fun, and I did miss, I had a little FOMO from the studio and being here with you. What'd you do for fall break?
I actually had the opportunity to go back to my high school and be a guest speaker for the journalism class that goes on there. So it's about 50 plus students. And it was a little intimidating at first, like showing our work to people that have no idea what I'm doing at Kansas. But I got to answer great questions for them, made them feel more confident in their abilities and skills. I got to teach them how to use a camera, film better, conduct better interviews, stuff like that. And I also got to watch high school football play, which was awesome, and I also got to see girls volleyball go on too. So jumping right back into it, as we say all the time, we bring up a contemporary issue each week, and this week we thought it would be good to touch on the base of how many professional sport platforms there are for women. So what I found doing research and everything like that was the top 4 that kept coming up was WNBA, of course. The finals just happened. Women's soccer, women's hockey, softball, and volleyball, of course. But there just were some drastic differences when I was just comparing them to the men's side of things. So I wanted to dive deeper into the WNBA versus NBA since they just did finish playing. Chicago Sky won. Hometown representation.
Amazing game.
Awesome. What I found was just the WNBA has not been around as long as the NBA has.
Yeah, it truly hasn't. And they don't have the platform that the NBA has too. Like, I guarantee not many of you knew that the other day was the WNBA finals and the Chicago Sky won, and it was an amazing game, and Candace Parker went off and just proved everyone wrong because for whatever reason the WNBA has an award where the players vote the most overrated player, and it was Candace Parker. Did you see that?
I did see that, and I was like, this should have been MVP.
An award.
MVP.
But yeah, so I think it is a huge difference because the NBA season starts tonight, and the amount of fans that go and the popularity it has over the WNBA is just nuts. It's crazy.
Going off of the years where each platform has been around at, the NBA has been around for 75 years, and the WNBA has been around for, I think, 24 years. And I just feel like there's a big misconception around the pro 100%. Platforms that I just feel like individuals and media platforms and news outlets and stuff, they don't give the women professional platforms enough credit nor enough time to see, hey, they're going to continue to evolve over time into these bigger, better platforms. Like for the WNBA, I think it was record-breaking attendance for the finals game. And when talking about softball too, fan attendance has continued to increase and go up because the platforms are becoming bigger. So there's just a misconception around how they're failing when they're not because they just haven't had enough time.
But the platforms sadly are not anywhere near where they should be, and they are growing popularity, which is a good thing, and that's why we're here to bring awareness to these, and I want to share that with you guys. I mean, for the WNBSL too, the Women's Soccer League, it's amazing difference from the MLS to what there is now, and they have like 10 teams in the women's soccer league. Like, it's tiny. It is tiny. But, I mean, they're still rolling. They're cruising. They just had a huge falling out with their commissioner, too, which is a big thing. But it took until this year to give women equal playing contracts for soccer. I mean, how much longer is it going to be the same to where we get that for everything else?
Exactly. And that's like what I want to see happen very soon. And I know like people make the arguments about the revenue and the revenue sharing, but going into these these women aren't necessarily being paid a lot to just play their one sport. But it's just so like awesome to see those ladies that still stay into the pro industry because they love it so much, because I think that's just a big reason. It is so small that when you go in college, I feel like there's so many, like it's the equal amount of sports play for women and male in college and in high school, but come professional wise, I just think that's why individuals shy away, because you only have limited options to choose from, and the roster sizes are so much smaller than those and the male professional wise, because they can't afford to pay their players, even though they might want them, they just can't afford to pay more than like 10 or 15 players.
And going back to like the NBA thing, like Ben Simmons just got fined $1.4 million. The salary cap for the WNBA is 1.3. Like, he just got fined that much. That's not even nearly as much as the WNBA players are making in general.
Exactly.
Like, it's just crazy.
It doesn't matter. It's just a little, it's just a little dent in his paycheck.
Seriously.
It's fine.
He's making plenty of enough money to pay for that fine.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, Soleil is right now on Jayhawk Boulevard asking students their stance on professional sports and for women.
Thank you, Soleil.
Well, obviously, I think it was kind of interesting to see how the men that Soleil interviewed didn't name any pro women sports, but two or one. And I think it was an interesting viewpoint when she asked the young lady over the camera, can you name the men's professional sports? And right away, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL. So it just goes back to representation and how much we can, like, individuals will put out to show content from the women's professional side of sports.
Exactly. Well, speaking of interviews, I just interviewed one of my very best friends who actually lifts for the Team USA, and we are going to cut to that interview right now. Thanks, Emma, for being here. So tell me, how did you get into weightlifting? What brought you into it? What motivated you to get into it?
So I used to be an elite gymnast from the age of like 3 to 11, and I ended up actually fracturing my heel twice in 6 months when I was 11. And so I just had like way too many injuries for like a super young girl in sports. So I ended up quitting. But like I said, I've been surrounded by sports my entire life. So I had to move on to the next thing. So I went into CrossFit, but I was super small. Like I'm saying, like really, really very small. And so I had to get my strength up. So I ended up taking like weightlifting private lessons specifically for CrossFit, but I ended up being like really good at weightlifting. So I just stuck with that. And then it's just been a long journey since.
Awesome. So what got you to where you are now? Like, why did you pursue it? Why did you keep going with it?
If I'm going to be honest, the first national competition I went to, I won. And so I was like 11, and, you know, I'm like 11 years old, like posting on my, like, what grade was I? 6th grade Instagram. I'm like, I was national champion, blah, blah, blah. But now it's like, I'm like 6-time national champion, 32-time American record holder. And so it's kind of just like snowballed into what it is now, like, because I just kept going because I just kept winning, if I'm being honest.
Sure. So have you ever seen yourself pursuing this sport as a professional career? Do you see it taking off somewhere into the future?
Yeah, so right now, I mean, I'm only 19, but you usually peak for like weightlifting whenever you're like 25. And so the Olympic team, since Olympic weightlifting is an Olympic sport, the Olympic team is usually like 25 to like 30 range. And so obviously like I want to look forward to that, but granted it's like a long time away. But like right now I'm on like the top 20 list to look out for like the 2024 and 2028 Olympics. So yeah, like right now I am like a professional weightlifter. Like that's my job.
So, what's it like being a full-time student and a full-time professional athlete? How do you balance the two?
I won't even lie. It's kind of like the hardest thing ever, as you can attest
Hmm.
to. I mean, granted, like I'm in a sorority and I'm in school as well while trying to do weightlifting at the same time, and it's really hard to balance because I drive back and forth to Kansas City almost every single day to train.
So, what's it like being in a sport that some men struggle to do?
Oh my God, this is a comment that I get asked a lot of time. My favorite thing that I get asked by men is the first thing they say, or like whenever they find out about the whole weightlifting thing, is how much can you bench?
Yep.
Well, first of all, you've seen me. I have little noodle arms. They can only do about 75 pounds, okay?
No way.
Very petite. And my body just doesn't do a lot. And like Olympic weightlifting is more technique based than strength based, if anything. Like that's just why I'm just so small. And like I don't know. Men are just very, I won't lie, they're like a little hesitant and like, they're like, what? At first, because you would never be able to tell that I was a professional weightlifter because I'm just not, I don't have the build of like what you think of like a power lifter, like a bodybuilder or anything like that. So they're just like very shocked at first, but then they just ask me like a ton of questions because they think it's the coolest thing ever. So,
For sure. So, I understand you're in Mexico. Tell me what you're doing there.
yeah, so I'm here for the Junior Pan Am Championships in Guadalajara. So I just left yesterday. And so today I dedicated my entire day to cutting weight because I'm overweight per usual. And then I lift tomorrow.
What struggles have you faced to get where you are now?
I won't lie, I've been through a lot of stuff. My biggest thing that I struggled with was self-confidence and self-esteem and that type of stuff because people were not nice about weightlifting in like middle school and like the beginning of high school and stuff like that.
For sure. Last question I have for you. What is one piece of advice you could give to another woman trying to do what you do now?
Oh my God. Um, I probably say no matter how hard it is or how hard you like think it is, it's definitely like anything is accomplishable and like you can accomplish anything because like granted I never thought I would be here like where I am today from like quitting gymnastics and thinking that was my whole life, like thinking I was going to go to college for gymnastics and all that, to where I'm like a professional weightlifter that's like on her way to go to the Olympics and stuff like that. And like now I work for Nike and like, it's just like I never thought I would be where I am today when I was like 11 years old. So like I never thought I would be able to accomplish all that. So definitely like no matter what, like push like through whatever you're doing and like try as hard as you can because you never know like what could honestly happen. You never know what the future is going to tell. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Emma, for answering all my questions. And thank you so much for coming and having this interview with me. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's good to talk
Yeah.
to you.
Bye. I'm so glad I got the opportunity to talk to Emma again, and I want to thank her again. Now we are going to have a feature special guest, Maya, talk about the WNBA.
Where you go to college makes a statement about you. This place will become a part of you, your identity for life. The University of Kansas, a great place to be you.
Welcome to the WNBA Report. I'm Maya Peterson, and I usually don't get a full block to talk about women's basketball, but today is special. The finals just ended, and if you don't know much about the WNBA, it's okay because I'm going to give you a quick recap. Now, the past week, the finals have been going on with the Phoenix Mercury, who holds the Big Three, the GOAT Diana Taurasi, the Big Brittany Griners, and of course, the newcomer but still the vet, Skylar Diggins-Smith.
And on the other end, you have the Chicago Sky. The kid from Chicago that's home for a year, Candace Parker, the three-point specialist, Courtney Vandersloot, and of course, one of my favorites, which I'll get into later, Kalia Copper. Now, the quicker recap I guess I could give you before I jump into the top 3 plays, because I don't have enough time to break down game 1 through game 4, but I can tell you what's important and what made the Chicago Sky a championship team this year. Game 1 went to Chicago Sky, game 2 Phoenix Mercury, and game 3 and 4 were sold out in Chicago, and home court advantage means everything to this team, so they were able to go ahead and take game 3 and 4. Now, top 3 plays from the night and from the series. Let's start off big. So the Chicago Sky had the biggest challenge of having to contain Brittany Griner. If you know anything about her, she's from Baylor. She knows how to work the paint. She's the best off the glass, and she's the hardest person to guard off of this Phoenix Mercury team. Now, starting off, they had Azura Stevens, who was guarding her, but then had a little bit of a foul trouble, which Stephanie Dolson had to jump in. Now, Stephanie Dolson is another good vet, but then she got into foul trouble. What do you do at this point? Coach Wade draws up a play for them to start doubling Brittany Griner. But here's the issue. Once you contain Brittany, you still have Diana Taurasi, Skylar Diggins, and your 2, Shea Petty and Sophie Cunningham, that it's harder to not guard them than it is to guard them. Double Brittany, she kicks it out to Shea on the corner. One more dish to Diana Taurasi, and the 3 is good. Got a bigger problem on our hands. What's next? Easiest solution, Candace Parker. She says, you know what? It's okay, guys. I'm going to guard Brittany Griner, and I'm going to get the job done. And that she does. Brittany Griner finished the night with 28, but Candace made sure she didn't pass the 30 margin. So leading to our second play, Candace Parker, the Chicago kid, doing whatever it takes to bring the city a championship, did just that. Now, like I mentioned before, the Chicago Sky were down 10, then they were at the point of breaking the 5-point margin, and then they were back down 10. Kalia Copper comes in for the fast breaks, makes it a 3-point game. Oh, Courtney Vandersloot, another name that I'm going to talk about the next play. She drives the basketball down the court, kicks it out to Candace Parker. The city knows what's happening. Everyone puts up the signature 3, so Candace Parker goes ahead and delivers. When the Sky were down 10 points, Candace Parker is heard telling her team, look, right now we're trying to hit home runs when we should be focused on hitting singles to lead us to the big runs. And from a vet, that probably sounds easier said than done, but that 3 that she hit was a grand slam for this team. Moving on to our play number 3, my favorite play of the series, probably of the playoffs, and I'm calling this play jump, jump, jump. Because Courtney Vandersloot, whenever she gets the ball, she makes you want to jump. You know not to jump, but instead you always jump. And she showed us she's driving to the basket. You see her take the right wing. Stephanie Dolson steps up for the screen. Shea Petty is trying to keep up and catch up. And then what happens? Courtney Vandersloot hits a pop, a pivot, and pulls up for the jumper that is good in Chicago Sky. We've won the championship. And that's all that matters to the city, to the team, and of course our WNBA fans that were rooting for the Chicago Sky to show that Skytown is the right town. Now, moving on to our MVP talk. Kalia Copper, like I already mentioned, an amazing player. She showed her grit throughout this playoffs. She had to guard Skylar Diggins-Smith. She had to guard Diana Taurasi, and also she had to guard Sophie Cunningham, a kid from Philly with big dreams to win the MVP. In her speech, she said she worked hard, and hard work pays off. So congrats to the 2021 WNBA Finals MVP. The WNBA playoffs and finals were a true thriller this year. Women in sports breaking boundaries that we all couldn't have pictured a year ago or maybe even 6 months ago. As a WNBA fan, I'm excited to see how this year's viewership and engagement will play into the upcoming season. Could we watch the finals on ABC? YouTube TV actually air overtime instead of the 3 o'clock news, and more sports figures joining the madness on the sidelines. I'm not sure, but I'm surely excited to see what this all could mean and bring us for the upcoming season. Not only for the WNBA, but also for women's basketball as well. So now let's kick it over to Soleil Rucker for her weekly sports recap.
Thank you, Maya. This past weekend, the Kansas Jayhawks hosted the homecoming game against Texas Tech in David Booth Memorial Stadium. Once again, our defense had a hard time holding the Texas Tech offense. 5 minutes within the game, the Raiders scored for a 1-yard touchdown. Towards the end of the first quarter, Jacob Borcella missed a 47-yard field goal. The second quarter came and the score is 7-0. 15 seconds into the quarter and Jason Beam's pass is intercepted. Halfway through the quarter, the Raiders scored a 28-yard field goal. At the end of the quarter, the Raiders then scored 2 more touchdowns. Going into halftime, Texas Tech 24 and the Kansas are still not on the board. Going into the third quarter, the Jayhawks are 3rd and 10 and Jason Beam runs for no gain. In the middle of the third, Raiders scored a 5-yard touchdown, now with a score of 31-0. Kansas Jayhawks are having a hard time fighting their defense trying to get a first down. Raiders then score another touchdown. With 52 seconds left in the game, Miles Kendrick passes to Luke Grimm for 14 yards for a touchdown. Eden White-Schultz recovers a fumble by the Raiders. Jayhawks now have the ball with 5 seconds into the game. Miles Kendrick passes a complete pass to Lawrence Arnold for 13 yards for a touchdown. That's all the recap that I have for homecoming. This weekend, the Jayhawks will host Oklahoma Sooners. We'll take a commercial break, and Lily will be back with the NFL recap. See you next week, Jayhawks.
For students searching for a way to stay active in an outdoorsy way, the City of Lawrence has bike trails running in every direction, and with the new Bike Share program, we can stay in shape as we tour the sights of our beautiful city. Clinton Lake is only a short 30-minute bike ride away from Daisy Hill and has the most incredible sunset location in all of Lawrence. Walking campus may give you the KU calves, but biking can give you the KU thighs. Bike Lawrence today.
Welcome back to this week's NFL recap, and it feels great to be back. Let's waste no time and get right into it. The NFL was back in London the last 2 weeks. The Atlanta Falcons and the New York Jets faced off October 10th, and the Jacksonville Jaguars and Miami Dolphins played this past Sunday. All I can say is finally Jacksonville broke their historical losing streak. Seems like the Jaguars have no issue winning in other countries. Also, good news for fans of Trevor Lawrence. He seems to be getting better each week. The number 1 draft pick threw for 319 yards and a touchdown and stepped up in the fourth quarter when his team needed him most. Jacksonville had a huge defensive stop after stopping Miami's offense on the 44-yard line with a 4th and 1 situation. The stage was finally set for Trevor Lawrence to claim his first NFL victory. There were just seconds left to play. Lawrence threw a much-needed pass to wide receiver Lavasky Chenault Jr. for a 12-yard gain, which set up for Jacksonville for a 53-yard field goal. The kick was good, and the Jaguars were finally able to celebrate their first NFL win of the season. This past Sunday marked the 100th year of the Packers versus Bears rivalry. And although Khalil Mack recorded his 6th sack this season when he tackled Aaron Rodgers on an offensive drive, Rodgers proved once again why he still owns the Bears. Even though the Packers were facing many injuries going into the game and lost Preston Smith, Josh Myers, and Darnell Savage during the game, the Packers were still able to seal a 24-14 victory and continue to lead the rivalry with 102 wins. Rodgers also completed 17 for 23 passes for 195 yards, 0 interceptions, and 2 touchdowns. Oh, let's not forget about the 1 touchdown he ran into the end zone himself. A few other notable players from that game were Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams. Adams had 4 catches for 89 yards. Jones recorded 17 carries, which resulted in 76 yards and 35 receiving yards for 1 touchdown. The Packers have now won 5 games in a row. Now, it is time for more people to start paying attention to the 6-0 undefeated Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals came off a big road game against the Browns with a score of 37-14. Although the Cardinals had no head coach this week, it still wasn't a problem. The offense and defense definitely did not miss a beat. Kyler Murray had 229 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. The offense had over 350 yards in total. The Cardinal defense continued to show how well they can play against teams. Arizona stopped Cleveland 3 times at 4th down situations, stopped the run game, and accounted for 5 sacks during the game. Once again, the Cardinals showed that they are the it team and can be resilient and overcome adversity. That is all I have for this week's recap. Make sure to tune in next week. Now over to Lily, as she will share her thoughts on NFL fantasy.
Back to our Week 6 update, and let's get ready here for Week 7. Now, I want you to think all the way back to when you were drafting your fantasy team for this season. Remember when you start to select your players and pay absolutely no attention to their bye weeks? Yeah, me too. We've all been there, and let me tell you, the same team you drafted will not be the same team you finish the season with. You're always tinkering around, dropping and adding players as the season goes on. And with that being said, there's 6 teams this week with a Week 7 bye, and those teams include the Bills, Chargers, Cowboys, Jaguars, Steelers, and the Vikings. Some players that are notable on this bye week include Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, Emmanuel Sanders, Zach Moss, Dawson Knox, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, James Robinson, Marvin Jones Jr., Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Justin Herbert. With all of that in mind, here are some players you should consider for your Week 7 fantasy waiver pickups. Now, considering that there are 3 huge quarterbacks out this week, Dak, Herbert, and Allen, I'm going to suggest some quarterbacks that are specific to their Week 7 value. Derek Carr, Las Vegas Raiders. Already this season, Carr has seen 4 fantasy games with 20-plus fantasy points. Now, Philly's defense has not allowed a ton of passing yards per game. It has surrendered 12 touchdown passes and allowed opposing quarterbacks to complete 71.5% of their passes, each among the worst of the NFL. Next up, I have Tua, quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Tua returned in Week 6 and put up a 300-plus yard game with a passing effort for over 21 fantasy points. Now in Week 7, his matchup features the Falcons, a team that has allowed 11 passing touchdowns and picked off 1 pass this season. However, Miami simply cannot run the ball, leaving Tua likely to throw the ball very often. Last up for quarterbacks, I have Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback for the Denver Broncos. Teddy B has played his role very well this season so far, completing 70% of his passes and averaging over 250 yards per game. Their matchup this coming week includes the Browns, whose defense is notorious for being vulnerable against the pass, allowing 24 touchdowns through the air this season already. There isn't a massive upside with Bridgewater, but he does have over 18 fantasy points in 4 of the 6 games this season. Running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, don't worry, I got you. Let's get right into it. Alex Collins, running back for the Seattle Seahawks, and Rashad Penny, also a running back for Seattle. In the absence of Chris Carson due to a neck injury, the Seahawks put Collins on the field to fill in. Collins handled 38 touches in 2 games while rushing over 100 yards in Week 6. Now, it is worth noting that Collins is dealing with an apparent hip issue, but Coach Pete Carroll has not shut the door on him quite yet for Week 7. In the event that he does not play, this is why I mentioned Penny. Carroll has stated that Carson is expected to be back, but if for some reason he's not, I see Penny handling the ball. Next up, I have Tim Patrick, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. Tim Patrick, this man is simply, he just keeps on producing. He has a touchdown in 3 games this season and at least 10 fantasy points in all but 1 game. His role has expanded with the injuries to Judy and KJ Hamler. But even when Judy returns, I suspect Patrick will stay involved. Patrick deserves to be rostered in many more leagues. For a tight end to consider, I have Ricky Seals-Jones for the Washington football team. When Logan Thomas went down, the team turned to Seals-Jones, and he has basically become a full-time player. He found the end zone in Week 6 and hauled in 4 total catches for 58 yards. This comes from the previous week when he had 5 catches for 41 yards. It's difficult to find a tight end who has a steady role in the passing games, and Ricky Seals-Jones is doing exactly that right now. He's a good pickup for anyone who's looking for a usable tight end right now. Now, I'll mention a couple more, but I won't go into depth. Rashad Bateman, wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. Zach Ertz, tight end for now the Arizona Cardinals. J.D. McKissick, running back for the Washington football team. And Ty Hilton, wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. All right, guys, that's all I have for you this week, but tune in next week at the same time for more fantasy advice. Also, side note, basketball season started this week, so let me know if you want to see my fantasy basketball team, and if you want me to throw some fantasy basketball into the mix, I also can offer my fantasy hockey team. Also, last side note, since I haven't seen you guys in a little while, I'm freaking 6-0 in fantasy football. Let's go. Thank you guys for joining us this week, and we hope to see you again the same time next week. Bye, guys.